I want to get to this. Boy, the NBA is. I'm excited to have it back. And I'm watching last night, and Atlanta is playing Brooklyn, and no one is playing defense. And Brooklyn
145.
It was great, though. I mean, that was good hoop, right? There's just so much offensive talent. I do like what Atlanta's done, to bring some veterans in, some guys that we think can play some defense. Trae Young doesn't shoot the ball well from three, but the Brooklyn Nets end up surviving the Atlanta Hawks. So if you just watch that game, you're like, wow, there's no defense. But if you look at the scores of some of these other games, just blowout after blowout after blowout, right? The Heat beat the Bucks, but that's after the Bucks had beaten the Heat the night before by like 50.
Right, 47 exactly. Yep.
The Celtics beat the Grizzlies, and we should point out that Ja Morant didn't play because he badly sprained his ankle the night before. That's a 19-point game. The Hornets beat the Mavericks. Remember, the Mavericks were the team that were up 50 on the Clippers. That's the only game they've won this year. The Hornets win by 19 points. The Spurs and Lakers, of course, that's notable because Becky Hammon became the first even acting female head coach when Greg Popovich got ejected. The Clippers blow out the Blazers, and those were mild blowouts compared to the night before. Why do you think there's so many blowouts in the NBA?
It's very interesting. I find the NBA at current state, I know things will get better, but unwatchable for the most part. And Doug, you're a basketball guy. You played the game at a high level. I love basketball. I've been covering the league for a long time. And it's hard for me to watch these games where it seems like I don't know if the players are all the way into it. Is this preseason? There was a couple of graphics put up on the Clipper game the other night, which showed that 25% of the games so far have been decided by 20 points or more. And then TNT also had a graphic which talked about how many games in NBA history had been by where teams won by 50 or more. And last year there were only 2 such games in that category. And in the first week, we almost had 2 of those games eclipsing that or matching that number when Dallas won by 51 and Milwaukee won by 47 almost. So I don't know if it's they rushed the guys back too early. The guys aren't really into it and don't really, care. And it's going to be a month or so before they really feel like they want to play. I don't know. I would love to hear what you think because you watch it and this is your sport. You're closer to it. It just, I'm not a guy who's going to watch a 25 or 30 point blowout. I'm going to look for a Golden Girls rerun if the game gets out of hand.
All right, I would stop you at the Golden Girls rerun. Let's stop at the goal. I think there is twofold of what took place. I don't think this is a player revolt, but the players, especially the Lakers, and maybe to a lesser extent the Heat, like that is a quick turnaround. But you have it on both sides. Some teams hadn't played since March, right? Some teams
didn't go to the bubble, right?
Right. Neither, and there. So there is no perfect. There is no perfect way to start the NBA, because you had to start it now. And I think that leadership understood you got to start it now because you had to get those Christmas Day games in for
what
TV.
They say, $500 million or something extra, or they would have lost out if they didn't?
Yes. So this is one of those begrudgingly going to work. Teams trying to manage it, no one trying to get hurt. But again, this is part of it is where the league is, where the pendulum swings, right? Where sometimes you have the power of the owners, or the NBA they call them governors, and the front offices is too great. The pendulum has swung back the other way, where I think it's too much in labor has too much power, and it just does. Where the players, they're just games are like, man, I don't really want to. I can't go. You don't know who's going to play. Like, why? It's not just that the games aren't that much fun to watch because there's no fans. It's you don't know who's going to play, right? Like last night, LeBron and Anthony Davis decided to play, but the game before, Anthony Davis basically no-showed and LeBron didn't play, right? So I just and that's only a micro. You got KD and Kyrie. That KD hadn't played in a year and a half, and his second or third game in, he's taken it off.
It was his third game, right? They won the first two, and then he didn't play.
Same thing with Kyrie. So you're like, look, if you're not that into it, how can I get that into it as a fan? And I think it's good. No matter how good it ultimately gets once we get to March and April, and I think that, and like anybody who's like thinks I'm a hater on the league or the players, dude, these guys are so much more talented than or skilled in many ways, more with the basketball than without than previous generations. The shooting is obscene. The depth of talent on some of these teams, they finally gotten it spread out to where you got 2 stars on many of these teams. Some aren't as good as others. But you do the days of when you get 3 or 4 stars in this league where it's all spread out, it's too much, right? So you have some parity there. You got so many good things, but God, it's a hard watch when the games are so non-competitive and you don't know who's going to play on a given night.
I agree, and that's the other part. I'm against the whole rest thing from a standpoint. Now, people aren't buying tickets or whatnot, but Doug, I think it's very unfair. I don't have any kids, but if my son wanted to go to a Laker game and see LeBron in person, on Christmas or whatever the day is, I remember a couple of years ago, this is where the uproar is that he didn't go to Memphis, and maybe it was 3 or 4 days before Christmas. You remember that? And,
yes, I remember.
And that was Christmas presents for a lot of kids. Like that was, they're coming to town. I'm going to see LeBron in person. And not only did he not play, he didn't even show up. He didn't even travel to Memphis, and a lot of people felt jilted, like they got cheated, and I don't think that's right. I just don't. When people get hurt, Doug, we buy tickets. I understand that. If you're telling me he's on the disabled list or the injured list or whatever you want to call it, I can accept that, right? Things happen. People get hurt. But when I hear, oh, he's resting today, I don't want to hear that. I want to be able, unless I can get a refund on my tickets, I'm not happy with that, and I don't like it. I think it's a bad thing. I know Pop kind of started it, and then once LeBron started taking days off, people followed the leader, and then other guys started doing it, and it became a problem. And even ESPN and ABC balked at the league. Am I right, Doug? Because some of these big games.
I don't think there's any question that TNT's not happy about it either. It's bad. I mean, look, there's a multitude of factors. I mean, look, you've priced out many of your blue collar fans anyway, right? So as much as I agree with you, the kid in Memphis, many of the kids in Memphis were affluent kids. So look, that kid gets plenty of presents, right? So the idea of pricing out your lower to middle income fans is a problem, and it's not just the players' problem. That's the owner's problem as well. There's everybody's trying to make a buck anywhere possible, and that's going to get worse, not get better. But yeah, I mean, look, those are the consumers, and anyone who's ever been to a game and seen that one magical moment, it's like, why do people? Why do we go to baseball games as adults when it's like boys? Well, because when I was a kid, Randy Myers from the Mets threw me a ball when I went to a Dodgers Mets game, right? Like I remember that.
I was in Shea Stadium. I was working, but I covered Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, my first World Series I ever covered, Doug, when the ball went through Bill Buckner's legs. I'll never forget that moment. And what it felt inside Shea Stadium, you know what I mean? Like you don't let go of those things. I agree with you.
Yeah. So there's a multitude of problems, but I do think the NBA had to know this, and they're doing their best to manage it. They don't want their players to get hurt, and they also don't want their players to think they're going to get hurt, because that's when you either do get hurt or you just don't play with optimum effort. But whatever it is, as talented as these teams are, the product. It's just ragtag at times, because you have such a disparity in who's playing and who's not. Speaking of that, can the NBA fix that as a problem? We'll ask an NBA insider. All right, let's welcome in Kerheelan, who joins us. He's the lead NBA writer for NBC Sports. He joins us here on the Dan Patrick Show on Fox Sports Radio. Do you want to come clean about any porch pirating you've done?
That's right. We
during
want
the
to know.
pandemic, Kurt?
No, sadly, now I want to go on Ring Neighborhood though and search where Doug Gottlieb is showing up on somebody's video.
You know it, and he probably doesn't have on a lot of clothes, and it's like, who is this guy? He looks
Honestly,
like a bum.
if we're being honest, I've worn the same sweats now for 3 days in a row.
That's what I'm saying. I believe it. I believe it.
I was kind of picturing a flowing robe for some reason, but okay.
I like that. I like that flowing robe. Kurt, help us out. Why? I mean, man, there's been a lot of blowouts. Why do you think it's been so bad so far?
Yeah, it's been strange just to see. I mean, teams like the Bucks blow somebody out and then get blown out. I think part of it is, frankly, the the faster pace of games and shooting more threes. You're just going to get some kind of random variance in games to use not to go all statistical, but you're just going to end up with more blowouts in that kind of situation. But I also think this year, it's really just the short training camps. Not every guy came into camp in shape because of the quicker turnaround, and some guys were kind of caught off guard or enjoyed their time off a little too much, whatever it is. The short training camp seems to have, guys are just not bringing it every night. And like I said, it's not a case where you're like, oh, this team gets blown out, then they get blown out again, then they get blown out again. I was there for the Christians of the Lions Clipper Dallas game the other day.
Wow.
But the Clippers won their other 4 games. It's not like they're bad. They mailed it in for a day.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the Brooklyn Nets. I love the makeup of that team, the depth. Yeah. Kyrie and KD. KD has been to the conference finals. What is it? Every year since 2013 that he's been, when he's healthy.
Yeah.
And I just wanted, Doug, a side note. Plaxico Burress somehow bet me for a pair of new Jordan Off-Whites that the Nets wouldn't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. He has a new show called The Up On Game with LeVar Arrington and TJ Houshmandzadeh. But he actually bet me that the Nets won't make it to the Eastern Conference Final. Not win, not go to the finals, not win the finals, but actually get there. Please tell me I got a great bet going because I like the Nets and what they've done.
Where do you find suckers like this to bet? That's where I got to find.
I don't know. I was like, what? I'll take that bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep Eastern Conference and it's a long way off, so whatever. But they have looked like maybe the best team in basketball to start the season, right? The Lakers are going to be there at the end, and I'm not really worried about them. They're 3-0 when Kevin Durant plays, and their defense is going to have to tighten up a little. They gave up 141 last night to the Hawks and what have you. That said, they look phenomenal. Kevin Durant in particular, by the way, not only is putting up, 33 points or whatever last night, and he's averaging all this. Watch him on defense, and you can see him just stick with guys. Christmas Day, a lot of people watched that game. He was on Jason Tatum for a while and did a credible job on an all NBA level player. He's moving so well. Kyrie's got the thing back. They're going to miss Spencer Dinwiddie, but I'm with you. To me right now, they might be the best team in the East.
Well, no, look, I think talent-wise, everybody. I don't think anybody think. I mean, first, there's a little bit of the KD FU tour, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You're right about that.
I think people, look, he just had it. People say, well, you can't win a championship. All right, I won championships. And by the way, I outplayed LeBron in both the NBA Finals.
Oh, yeah.
I was a Finals MVP, and he felt like he didn't get the respect he deserved. Then he comes back early from injury, and they probably would have won the thing if he was healthy. Who knows? He gets hurt, and it's like people, all of a sudden, everybody forgot how good he was. So I think that's a motivating factor. Look, the Plaxico bet is basically betting on injury and dysfunction. Because if it's just based upon roster, and you already had the injury to Spencer Dinwiddie, who he tore his ACL in college, but that wasn't the guys you're totally worried about. But Spencer is the solid in the sometimes erratic and up and down Kyrie who will just do what he wants. Like that's the big thing is right now everything's going great. You're winning. It's going according to plan, with the exception of Spencer Dinwiddie. How does Steve Nash handle Kyrie when things don't go well, when there is some form of adversity? That's really the question there, is it not, Kurt?
First off, there's not going to be any adversity when he's walking around burning sage before every game. He's just the bad juju is out of the building. No.
He's the all-time sage leader. I just want you to know that.
Okay. He is. You're going to miss Spencer Dinwiddie, too. He's just going to get, I don't want to say injured. He notoriously misses some time during the season. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but you're going to miss that depth as a third playmaker. They're going to miss him when Kyrie goes. And you're right. I think that we'll see how this team deals with adversity when some really hits it. But I think that that's what Steve Nash does bring to the table is just a calming influence. He's just steady. He's just not a guy on the court, he was a guy who never picked up his dribble, right? Like, he just, all right, 6 guys around me. I don't know where the 6th one came from. I'll just keep going. Like, he just never seemed to get phased, and I think he's going to be that way as a head coach. And I think they need that kind of calm mentality around them to weather some of the stuff that will eventually come. Every team faces adversity, except the team Doug Gottlieb was on. Obviously, not those teams, but every other team. Did.
No, everybody goes through it. I want to know what happens next.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about the Clippers.
I like the Clippers. I think people are going to be disappointed if they want to write that team off. I actually think they got better, and I like that Kawhi and Paul George have something to prove and reestablish this year. I like the Clippers.
I do too, and Kurt, I think in one of those, what were they actually missing? Yes, it was chemistry, but they were also missing rim protection, and they got that in Serge Ibaka.
Yeah,
right?
I like that.
And you got a guy in Nick Batum who, if he's your best player, you're screwed. If he's your second best player, you're screwed. But you know what? If he's your 5th best starter, and maybe your 6th or 7th best player, and he just has to be a multi-positional defender, a 3-and-D guy, now all of a sudden he can flourish. I really like it, and I like how their offense looks so far.
It looks much better.
Am I taking the bait early on the Clippers?
No, I'm with you on pretty much all that. Nick Batum showed up in much better shape than he has the last couple of seasons, right? Like, he just looks sharper. He's healthier. I think there may be more motivation to play for the Clippers than the Hornets the last couple of seasons, and it just kind of showed in how he's approached. He's looked good. Serge Ibaka, for me, is in a vacuum. Is Serge Ibaka better than Montrezl Harrell? They're probably not. But for them, he's better. You are spot on. He spaces the floor on offense and doesn't clog the lane. He gives them better rim protection. And let's be honest, Nikola Jokic isn't playing him off the floor. And that's what happened to Harrell in the finals. So I think the Clippers are coming to better. There's better motion offense. And I think Ty Lue was able, granted he moved over a chair, but he has the gravitas to come in and kind of say, hey, this is how the chemistry is going to be. This is the pecking order. I mean, Harrell being gone kind of set that up. This is the pecking order. This is how we're going to do things. And take it in a direction Doc couldn't because he'd just been there too long. I like the way they're set up outside of, apparently I just shouldn't go to games because when I go, they get crushed. But every other time I've watched them, they look great.
Yeah, they really have. I'm interested to see where that is. I know this is off the map. The Knicks have won a couple games early on. What do you make of could James Harden wind up there only because this is what the Knicks do, it's just keep putting Band-Aids on, a terminally ill patient and not really fixing the problem because they want somebody who has a name or some cachet. I look at that roster and look at that team. I don't know what they're doing.
If James Harden ends up a Knick, it means that Leon Rose couldn't keep James Dolan out of basketball decisions ultimately, right? Like, that's a James Dolan, hey, you know who we need kind of move. Right? Like, even though it raises their floor, it would make them a playoff team in the East, but nothing more. And then they'd have to pay him again in 2 years as he gets older. It's not a great fit. I mean, what I've loved about the Knicks so far is, they didn't do anything stupid this offseason. They didn't hey, let's go throw some money at an aging veteran. Like, they actually, and they've looked better. I mean, they've looked disciplined. They have looked like a well-coached team that's starting to see players develop. They've playing hard every night. Little steps, but they look. Look, it looks like the ship is going in the right direction for a change, right? Like it looks like, hey, you're doing all this right. So it would be very James Dolan to go, now that things are going well, what we need to do is bring in. So we'll see. I hope not for their sake, but it's not. Nothing's impossible in a James Dolan world.
Let me ask you one other thing. I've always called Sacramento NBA Siberia. I now think it's Washington. That's NBA Siberia. It is, Westbrook. I mean, he's putting up his numbers, doing his thing. They haven't won a game. Where is that franchise going? I know it's terribly run, and they just haven't been able to get anything going. But is Westbrook there to die? I mean, what is going to happen in D.C.?
I don't know that they're going to be able to move Westbrook, but I can tell you that there are GMs circling that team like vultures waiting for Bradley Beal, right? Like Bradley Beal is the guy everybody wants to trade for. He signed a short extension, but he basically, in theory, they could trade him at the trade deadline and probably be next offseason, but teams are circling. Because if it's ugly there, he's at some point, isn't he going to ask out? And he's going to be in a what is now that everybody's Giannis and all these people and LeBron and AD and everybody signed these extensions, and there's just not a great talent. Paul George, there's not this great talent pool in the free agent class next year. Everybody's looking at trades. Harden's on the top of the list, but Beal is right behind him, and if they don't start winning, it's going to get messy there. And I'm not sure. Their defense is terrible. Their defense is just dreadful. And I don't know. It's going to be one of those things where I think if they win a few games, it's because they outscore teams. But right now they're not doing that, and they're not going to win that many with that defense.
All right. Yesterday was LeBron James's birthday. Obviously, for the most part, outside of the opening game to the Clippers and a no-show game by Anthony Davis, he's looked every bit of LeBron James. The Lakers on paper appear to have a much better roster than they had last year, and the Marc Gasol thing on paper works, and there's been some times in practice where it works, but will it in your mind, do you think it all comes together in the end?
I do. I think right now their defense isn't where it was a year ago. I mean, their defense carried them to that title in the bubble,
Correct.
And it is just not back. It is just not back to that level yet. A lot of new faces, but having Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder on the second unit, plus it turns out LeBron and Anthony Davis are still good at basketball. like they're going to win. They're going to be a top seed, and they're going to be able to take the regular season seriously enough, but not so seriously as to wear guys down, build up some chemistry, and I think they'll be fine. I think they'll be rolling when the playoffs hit. They may not be the one seed, but they will be there.
All right, last thing. We mentioned Brad Beal, and I know that the Warriors have won a game, and they're not bailing as of now, but I don't like the roster construction they've done there.
Oh, no.
And it's not just that Clay got hurt. Like, what makes Steph special is Steph's probably better off the ball than he is with the ball in his hands, and they had constructed a roster, and granted, they don't have Draymond, who is like their point center for them at times. But you had KD, you had Sean Livingston, you had Iguodala, you had Barbosa, you had so many of these guys that could handle the ball and allow Steph to just roam and catch and create and make plays. You don't have that. How do you go about fixing all of these issues that the Warriors have because their roster was poorly reconstructed?
And all those guys you mentioned, Doug, high IQ players that knew how to take advantage of the space. That the gravity of Steph Curry is that he's going. You not only can you not leave him, but like a help defender better be nearby, right? So he just pulls defenders off the ball and stretches the defense, and it creates all this space. The guys on that team now don't know what to do with it. Like James Wiseman doesn't know what to do with this space. It's just it's not as high IQ a team. They don't have the same talent. I'm not a huge fan of. Look, Andrew Wiggins is going to be Andrew Wiggins. He's going to be once every 2 weeks. You're going to be like, that guy. Ooh, he's awesome. Oh, he's back to being the other guy again. Like, it's just, I'm with you. I'm not sold. I'm not even sure they're a playoff team right now in the West, which is so deep. But even if they are getting into the play-in and they're a threat, I don't
think they'll win another championship.
Get Clay back. even when you get Clay and Draymond back, I'm not sure how good this team is with these pieces around them. They don't have the role players. Maybe they can develop James Wiseman this year into something. He's athletic. He's an athletic freak with a lot of talent, but he also looks like a guy who played 3 games in college. He's still his head's spinning out there right now.
It is amazing how quickly and how mightily. I mean, you go back a year and a half ago, and when healthy, they were going to win their 3rd title, and then it all kind of fell to pieces.
Yep.
Kurt Helin, read his work at NBCSports.com.
Man, appreciate you. Happy New Year.
You too, guys.
Happy New Year! I'm going to put on a robe and go out and
now. What are you going to get, a sweet roll? Is there a sweet roll on the?
We can get that
porch?
delivered. It's on somebody's
sweet
porch.
roll?
I'll go porch surfing and
I don't know.
find
I don't know
some.
what you were doing, Doug. Phil's has actually really great pastries. Like they've got good croissants and stuff, man.
They
I don't know
I'm-
Phil.
I'm-
I've never heard of Phil.
It's not all. You don't have to. You need tea. You don't have to be coffee. It's every
tea guy.
cup is handcrafted. You get some tea. I'll bring you next time we're in person. I'll bring you some Phil's tea. I'm not a carb guy, Kurt, with the exception of a little bit of sweetener in my coffee. Kurt, thanks so much for joining us. Happy New Year.
You too. Take care, man.